This is Sports 225 with Lee Feinswag. Sports 225 with Lee Feinswag is Baton Rouge's longest running and best television show. Who would have believed that?
My best friend, Lee Feinswag, look at the Christmas.
Sports 225 is brought to you by Breck. Remember, it all starts at Breck. Now, your host, Lee Feinswag.
Well, it's Sports 225. My guest, as you saw from the wide shot, is Steve Schneider, the longtime sports director at WAFB. They call it Channel 9. His Twitter handle is 9 Sports Director, but there is no Channel 9 anymore. It's funny, we're sitting down to do the show, so it's Tuesday morning, and Steve and I got together early, we had breakfast, and we didn't talk one time about what we might talk about on the show, did we?
That's just that's the way it is between you and me. We just wing it,
so to speak. So, the topic of the week, let's start with this. The publicity that came out from the Yahoo Sports report that amplifies some of what happened with the FBI investigation and Justice Department charges regarding college basketball from the fall. And another Yahoo Sports story that talked about LSU basketball coach Will Wade. I'm not going there yet. It's too early. But the one thing that I will tell you at LSU, in my 33 years here, and you're slightly more than that, I believe.
yes.
Very rarely at LSU, when there's been smoke, has there not been fire. Is that amazing how that things just emanate from there?
Well, and people who follow present-day college sports would probably compare it to Ole Miss football, right? I mean, you had a new coach that went into Ole Miss, which was not good in football, was not getting big recruits. And immediately when they got the big recruiting classes, oh, well, they must be cheating. And in that case, where there was smoke, there was fire, and we all know the way it's turned out. So it's not surprising that they're looking into this. LSU has been, other than Ben Simmons, which was a family connection, a godfather bringing in the greatest player, LSU has not been at the forefront of college recruiting lately. New guy comes in, all of a sudden you have this, this great class. And of course, part of that has to do with Javonte Smart. You happen to have one of the top recruits in the nation right here in Baton Rouge. And if you can get that guy, he brings other people. But it's not surprising at all that the NC2A would be looking into LSU. How did they all of a sudden get there? But the bigger picture, what's come to light, the cheating and the corruption, and this is not new. This is not new. I mean,
No, exactly.
40 years of doing sports in the Baton Rouge area. I mean, how many different times have we seen this sort of stuff go on? I mean, college sports, has its ugly underbelly, and nobody's going to deny that.
Did you have to say 40 years?
For me, it's been 40 years, 1979 to 2018. So.
Well, my first newspaper job was January 1978.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember being in Chris Jackson's house in Gulfport, Mississippi. Basically a one-room shotgun house with holes in the floor and wallpaper coming down, and there was a bidding war for that guy. Who's going to get him? His mother was talking to people. He was deciding where he wanted to go. I mean, this is not new. This has gone on forever in college sports, and not just basketball.
His senior year recruiting was 1987, I believe.
That sounds right. 87 or 88, right in there.
And I had heard back then that the package for him was about $40,000, which in today's numbers, I don't know how that translates to with inflation. But
Mississippi State thought they were going to get him. His mom was talking to them. He was looking at LSU, and it's that's just one example. I mean, I hate to single Chris Jackson out because there have been so many others. But.
And one thing that I think that's important, and I think Steve will agree with me, we don't begrudge the athletes, and at least I don't. And I think, they're just buying into a system that's going to use them. Don't give me the whole thing, well, they get a scholarship, because like my kid was on a basketball scholarship, full ride. It still cost me $8,000 or $9,000 a year for him to go to college, okay? And if you're coming from a background where you have zero and yet the university is making millions. I still have no problem with paying the athletes and having them take advantage of the system in a positive way.
But anybody who thinks that paying athletes is going to get rid of corruption
exactly
doesn't really get what human beings do. Okay?
Right,
if the
right.
speed limit is 55, somebody's going to fly by you at 65, and you're going to say, well, if they're going to do it, I'm going to go 65. And then the guy from Texas is going to go 75, and then somebody from Louisiana is going to go 75 or 80.
No, it's another guy from Texas.
I mean,
Yeah.
yes, it needs to be addressed. But anybody who thinks that because you build in some kind of pay scale, I mean, Title IX is still in existence, right?
Of course.
Okay, so if you start paying college football and college basketball men, the women will have to be paid too, right?
Well, yeah, and you know the whole thing, you get us off on a whole nother track, but life would be simpler if we could just separate football from the rest of the equation, and especially Title IX. Then the equality would be much better for the women and for the Olympic sports. But because football's in there, it screws up everything. And and like I said, we didn't rehearse, but I will leave you with this as we get out of this first segment. Everybody's prejudiced and has some bigotry towards something. You must have something that drives you crazy or whatever. My
People who go 75 when it's 55.
My thing is Texas drivers. Yes, if you're from Texas and you're watching, that's my prejudice. Texas drivers. Two things. If you're in the left lane, it's for passing only. And you don't have to go that fast like Steve's talking about. Thank you. I feel better now. He's Steve Schneider. He's the sports director at WAFB, the CBS affiliate in Baton Rouge. I'm Lee Feinswag. This is Sports 225.
Hi, I'm the human dislike button. You may recognize me as the guy who enforces rules at Breck Parks. Check out my amazing presentation. Did you know? Motorized vehicles are not allowed in Breck Parks. Sales and solicitation are prohibited without permission from Breck. And my favorite rule, keep Breck Parks clean by placing all trash in trash cans. Come on, you can do this. For more information about these and other Breck rules, please visit breck.org/HDB.
Back on Sports 225, hanging out with Steve Schneider. He's the sports director at the CBS affiliate WAFB in Baton Rouge, which you can pretty much see anywhere now because of the app. And you probably have people watch you who used to live here or want to keep up with you. You probably hear from
the app and Roku, yeah, there's lots of ways to get us.
So we spent the first segment talking about pay in college athletics. What's some of the best ones you've heard? You don't have to name names unless you want to, whatever.
Well, I know that there have been times where LSU has maybe taken advantage of the summer work program. It was, I think, pretty well documented that John Williams, who was a Crenshaw, Los Angeles star who,
Right. This is a basketball player who played 2 years at LSU, including their 1986 Final Four team, and he was a magnificent college basketball
He was
player.
as good as there was in the country in terms of recruiting, and LSU landed him. And it came out later that his summer job was at one of the, businesses along the river, and he rarely went there and made, 10 or 15 times what a normal student worker would get paid. So, I mean, again, it's not anything new. There have been stories forever about that, and I will say this: it's much worse now because of the way the AAU programs and the brokers and people have gotten involved in it. It doesn't mean that the NCAA and college basketball is any cleaner or any better than those other issues that they now have. But with social media and with all these other people that are getting a piece of the pie or involved in the equation, it certainly can be a lot messier than it used to be. It used to be much simpler in that it was the players, maybe their families. I mean, Lester Earl had an entourage. When he came to the station about the time that LSU was signing him, of course, we now know that there was irregularities involved and LSU was put on probation for that whole thing. But there was a whole group of people that came with him, to the station when he was, talking about where he was going to go to college and what he was going to do in college basketball. I think that's grown exponentially, in terms of people getting to these kids when they're really young and at a really early age. And so they don't know anything different, right? Unless unless their family shields them from that sort of thing. They don't know any different. I mean, they're kids.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I was in Salt Lake City for a gigantic volleyball tournament in which every big-time college coach in the country recruits. And one of them is a guy named Ray Bouchard, who's the Kansas head coach. And he's a huge basketball fan. He even ducked out of the recruiting for 2 hours to go watch the KU West Virginia game on his phone. That was the one where Bob Huggins went nuts at the end of the game. Classic post-game press conference. But Ray was asking about, because he knew that I used to be the LSU basketball beat writer. We were talking about Lester Earl, and he was surprised to find out that he has a son who is a pretty good wide receiver. And it was just funny to hear from Ray and talk hoops and talk LSU hoops.
Drake Davis,
in Salt Lake City. Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Well, Lester. See, I heard Lester's package. Again, you talk about which is what you hear. I mean, I never, but I heard his was an $80,000 package, but that included a job for his mother, a job for his sister, the lease on his car. I don't have verification of all this. I'm just telling you what I heard. But the best line I ever heard was backed about John Williams, and I think I've mentioned this before, at least in local media on this show. I was talking to the late Judd Heathcote, who was the coach at Michigan State, and he was talking about how they were in on John Williams, who, not the guy directing the show, by the way, from JCW, but
the basketball player. And, and there were two John Williams, right?
Right. Later. Oh, yeah, the late John Williams from Sorrento.
Right.
Yeah. Very sad story that he died so young. But I played at Tulane. But anyway, so Judd said, yeah, we were in on that. He goes, but we got out at 30,000. I mean, he'd had no reason to tell me that, otherwise. He wasn't trying to. He was just as a point of fact.
That's right.
Yeah. What other ways have you ever heard of people? Have you, cash payments? Of course, there's always been the car thing, and whatever.
Well, a long, long time ago, when Dale Brown was early in his career, there was the story about Ron Abernathy, who had a suitcase with cash, and I think that was actually connected to Chris Jackson, if I'm not mistaken. It may not have been. It may have been somebody else.
Yeah.
I grew up in Mississippi. Gulfport High School was our rival. Before me, Purvis and Eugene Short played for my high school. They won state championships. Those guys led the nation in scoring. They went to the NBA. So I was around all, the high-end people. Now, they did not get recruited like Chris Jackson got recruited. They were excellent players, but they both went to Jackson State, played in the SWAC, and then one was signed as a first-round pick to the Knicks, and the other one went to Golden State, and I think for a while was the #1 scorer per minute in the NBA. I mean, he came off the bench as a sixth man, and so I was around those guys and kind of, saw a little bit of that. But, that sticks out as one that I remember, that there was a suitcase with cash in it that accidentally spilled open in a public place.
Well, it was the coach had...
kind of hard to explain carrying around that kind of cash in a suitcase unless you're,
Yeah, the assistant coach at Kentucky, Dwayne Casey, who's now an NBA assistant.
That was a FedEx thing, right?
Yeah. And if memory serves, God, I hope I don't get this wrong, but he ended up at Arizona, but a player named Sean Mills. Does that sound right? That's where all that was, but a Kentucky recruit, yeah. And we're just telling you the things that we know. Here, this is by no means unique to this area. We haven't even touched on football because, this it's a whole different system there.
I recall when the SEC really made a leap in football. I mean, SEC football's always been good, but there was a time, probably 15 years ago.
Well, after the merger in 92-93, where they brought in South Carolina and Arkansas, and then they started the SEC championship game. That's what really elevated things.
And I remember kind of coexisting with that was when coaches started turning each other in for recruiting violations, for inducements to get players. And at one point, the SEC said, if this keeps up, every one of our schools will be on probation, and we won't. Back then, they would take you off television if you weren't on probation. Our TV package will be gone, so just cool it. Stop turning each other in, so that we still have a league and still can get players and still have a TV contract. So I mean, the NCAA has done that.
Right.
They've put out this marketing campaign for years. 99% of our athletes are going pro in something other than sports. But the 1%, they're going pro and they're making all our money so that our organization exists, is the way I read into it. Is, we're going to remind you that most people don't break the rules and they're legitimate.
Steve Schneider on behalf of the NCAA, which is run by
Isn't that why they put those spots together?
Former LSU Chancellor Mark Emmert, and there isn't enough money in the world to want his job these days. All right, we're way over on this segment. He's Steve Schneider. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Hi, I'm the human dislike button. You may recognize me as the rules guy for Breck Parks. Sometimes the rules slip past us, so I put together this amazing presentation. Did you know? Golf practice is only allowed at designated golf facilities. Firearms, explosives, and weapons are not allowed on Breck property. Metal detecting is allowed in some parks, but go to Breck's website to learn more about this and other park rules. For more information, visit breck.org/HDB.
He yells really loud for a little guy. We're back on Sports 225. Steve Schneider's here with me. I'm Lee Feinswag. We have that nice kind of semi-springtime lull right now, although college baseball, LSU baseball, kicked off the last couple of weeks, and the LSU basketball season coming down the stretch run of a very successful first season for Will Wade, and spring football still a little ways off. High school sports in full bloom always, and keeps there's no time off for Steve Schneider and the guys at WAFB, because in the spring in some ways is busier than other times. But how about your boy Jacques Doucet, your longtime trusty assistant, winning a national honor?
It's awesome. It's awesome. He won the Louisiana Sportscaster of the Year award. It's a national sportscaster group out of North Carolina that does that every year, and he's a good example of why I haven't been in recruiting for a long time, right? Like Jacques been with us now 17 years, and it's really nice to not have to go out and recruit a point guard or a big postman to take a lot of the minutes and score a lot of the points. But really proud of him. He's been deserving of something like this for a lot longer than 17 years. This is maybe a long time coming, but
Career achievement, lifetime achievement award.
I'll tell you this, I've been in a lot of contests, won some stuff. A lot of it's very subjective. Jacques has done great work for all those years, and this time he obviously is being recognized for it. But he's, to me, he's an award winner every year on every assignment that he does. He puts his heart into it and does a good job. And the other night I was at the gathering for Augie Garrido and Skip Bertman. You mentioned LSU baseball. There's an argument for scholarships and recruiting and funds, because those guys for years have been going with 11.7 scholarships, and Augie Garrido thinks they should have 30. And
30 full.
30 full scholarships for baseball. And of course, you alluded to it before. Part of it is the how do you balance the different sports?
Yeah, because there are certain sports.
Football's got 85. So
75 now, I think, isn't it?
I thought it was 85
Could
and
be.
65. It might be 75 now.
Yeah.
I've
They have what they call head count scholarships, where it's one player, one scholarship.
Correct.
Football is one, basketball.
And that's what he was saying that
volleyball.
baseball should have, head count.
Baseball, softball, track and field, swimming.
You split them up.
Those, other head counts are gymnastics and golf, which I'm generalizing here, but as a rule, gymnasts and golfers probably come from a demographic where they don't need the money as much as the track and field teams, the swim teams, the baseball players.
And some of them probably can get academic scholarships.
Yep,
Probably
exactly.
don't even need athletic scholarships.
Yeah.
But
And if you're the parent of a poor parent of a gymnast, I don't want to hear about it.
I will say this: I think Augie Garrido is the Hall of Fame coach who was at Texas. Lastly, obviously was at Cal State Fullerton before that for years. He and Skip Bertman were at the top of their craft. He thinks that concussions will drive some parents to pull their kids out of football or move them away from football, and that this is the time for baseball to step in. And maybe they need Major League Baseball to help them fund,
College
the
baseball.
scholarships because, well, the scholarships for the kids because
No,
to a large degree, college baseball has become their minor league system. The minor league teams usually get a guy who's already ready to play AA ball or AAA ball, and the lower minors are for kids who aren't going to go to college and for international players.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Concussions, believe it or not, I'm working on a big package for volleyballmag.com, my other venture about concussions in volleyball. Epidemic. Huge. How many?
Hitting heads on the court?
3 ways. Getting hit by a ball.
In the head.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is you hear different stories. If a ball is rocked and you get it like in the temple area, that's one way. But soft hits to the face sometimes will do it. So there's being hit by the ball, hitting your head on the floor, and or colliding with a teammate. Knee to the head to head, elbow to the head. And it's amazing that it's such a problem in volleyball.
Yeah, and it's not the only women's sport. LSU soccer, from time to time, has had players who've dealt with concussions because one of the things you do in soccer is you head the ball.
Right. Well, one of the arguments in soccer, though, is that if you're heading the ball, you're the one deciding. So you're bringing the force towards the ball.
Correct.
Which is a little bit different, but still, it's all about the brain rattling around in their head. And mine is rattling around in my head right now, telling me we have to take this final break. He's Steve Schneider. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Well. Looks like someone forgot all neighborhood Breck Parks close at dark.
You want another?
I think they'll pass. Amplified music and sound is prohibited without permission from Breck. No alcoholic beverages on Breck property. Smoking of tobacco products is not allowed. Use of fire is prohibited except in grills. Gotta remember, Breck wants you to have fun, but in the right way. For more info, go to breck.org/HDB.
Coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225, thanks to John Williams, not the basketball player, for directing the show. Remember, go to sports225.com for all the show listings and the archives of all the old shows, including last week's show with former LSU basketball coach John Brady on our Sports 225 TV YouTube channel, and other shows in the past where Steve Schneider has been the guest.
I'd like to say, we started talking about Will Wade and the NCAA looking into his recruiting. He's a guy who I think they made the right choice. I mean, I can't listen to him enough. I mean, the stuff he says always makes sense. The way he handles the team. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And
I love the fact that he holds them accountable. Like the first game that I went to, where he called a timeout, even though his team had a big lead. This was in the early season, and he called a timeout to jump the ass of one of his players who didn't get back on defense, and he got a standing ovation. I mean, people cheered and got crazy because
he knows what he's doing
Yeah.
on all fronts. And so, Joe Oliva deserves some credit there. He hired a guy that can get the job done. Obviously, the other stuff will sort itself out. But
and it always does.
I enjoy, having played basketball. That was kind of, my sport most of my life. And I love football. I love baseball and all the other sports that we cover, gymnastics. But it's refreshing to have a guy in basketball who actually, speaks to the issues and is addressing them and is getting it fixed.
The 6'4+ Steve Schneider, who's
6'5",
who's adult
Michael Jordan without the 42-inch vertical.
his adult basketball career cut short by a cheap shot in a church league game. Did you ever play again after that?
Nope.
No.
Just, I horsed around.
Full-blown knee surgery.
Yeah.
Walked with a limp for a long time.
Patella in 38 pieces. That kind of tells you need to play golf.
All right. Well, we've both got busy springs coming up. None more busy than yours because, like I said, you've got LSU baseball, LSU softball.
Spring football starts March 11th. The
Spring
quarterback
football.
derby at LSU. It's going to be.
I've never heard that before. Is that something that happened in the past at LSU? Plus all the high school stuff. You can watch him, of course, on WAFB, the CBS affiliate. Follow him at 9 Sports Director on Twitter, and you can read the stuff on the app. On the website, and and on and on. And I mean, I could go on and on, but whatever. It's always fun when we get together.
Thanks for having me.
And we did pretty good for two guys who just went out for breakfast and never talked about rehearsing this show. All right, thanks. I'm Lee Feinswag. Thanks for watching Sports 225.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry.